Hey, recently we just had the hours go back 1 hour. It's getting mad. The evenings are super dark by about 5 o'clock. All the seasons. So, thank you for being here. I love you all. I want everyone to know that this is going to be basically the last big chunk. Yes, Big Joanne, good to see you. Queen, I hope you're well. So yeah, today's going to be like the last big chunk. 13 weeks so far. And then next week, we're going to just do the conclusion. And that'll be 14 weeks. I'm going to ask you as well, if you feel guided, if you're with me next week, to bring maybe a grape juice, a Lucozade, a wine, champagne, maybe even a little 1-2 Foster's beer, a cider, a shot of tequila, something. Because we're going to bust a shot to the mystic law, to life. And it would be an honor to be able to do that with you live, because as much as I love, and to be honest, there's such a power in what we're doing here live. I also feel that what we're doing here is you're helping me as well to lay down the foundation for people to be able to study Buddhism in their own time, way into the future now as well, you know, and they're going to see your beautiful faces. You're all part of this with me. So to be able to bust a shot with you live, or to have a quick drink next week will be incredible, because I'm seeing faces here that have literally been here for 14 weeks undisturbed, and it's an honor as well to have Chris as well to be here with me today as my co-host, helping me behind the scenes. Thank you, King. So also we may slightly overrun by maybe like 10-15 minutes today, because I want to just make sure I complete all the study. So we're going to finish the second and third section of chapter 6, Daisaku Ikeda. What's important with why is it important to have a mentor? And then once we've finished that, like I said, next week is just the conclusion, and that's not too many pages. I'll know that I'll do a little freestyle and we'll celebrate. So as always, this is not an SGI actual official meeting. This is just a book study with me, Aaron Indigo. Johnny Gilbert knows that we're doing this, but he never asked me to do this. He's very happy that we're doing this though. So yeah, we're gonna go straight in. Thank you so much for joining me, Sophie. I see you, Joe, Harley, Celeste, Maria. Wow. Original Bodhisattvas, Treasure Towers. Yes. Ceremony in the air. That's what we're doing right now. Remember, and actually, that being said, let me just read today's guidance, and then we'll chant together for 5 minutes, raise the energy, and we'll jump straight in. The guidance today is, for me, considering we're kind of like finishing the completion of the study today, this guidance to me couldn't have landed on a better day, because to me this is the essence of Buddhism. So let me read it. As always, Buddhism Day by Day, Wisdom for Modern Life. One of my favorite daily guidance books for Buddhism, Nichiren Daishonin Buddhism. Today in the UK is November the 3rd, 2021. So it says, the Lotus Sutra is a scripture to be practiced. Its teachings are meant to be put into action. Our faith and study of Buddhist doctrine are enhanced and given life through actual practice. Nichiren Buddhism is not a teaching of quiet contemplation and meditation. It is a teaching of action. That sentence one more time, I love it. Nichiren Buddhism is not a teaching of quiet contemplation and meditation. It is a teaching of action. Failing to translate the teachings of Buddhism into action is to go against Buddhism's fundamental spirit. So very much the reason why I love Buddhism and Nichiren Daishonin Buddhism when I found it is because we're not here just to kind of like transcend this realm or disappear, and that is totally acceptable and fine for different people's paths. But I think the people reflecting with me, and especially within the SGI, it's very much about how do we actually use these teachings to be the best version of ourselves. For me to be the best version of Aaron Indigo, the best model or photographer, not to transcend that and disappear and to go into the Andes or Machu Picchu, which I'm going to do one day, but that's not my practice. That's not what my main thing's going to be, you know? So, yeah, that was the daily guidance. Let me get this PDF up and we're going to jump straight in. And of course, if you have to leave before 8 o'clock, thank you for being here from the start. Let me find this. One sec. Okay. So, is this all right on your screen? See it? Thank you, Maria. So, yeah, the Evolving Buddha, last section. Until the conclusion next week. We've done it. We really are doing it. And this part as well, it's not too intense, you know. again, we're talking about why is it important to have a mentor? And again, I'm not specifically trying to convert people or make people want to have the same sensei as me, sensei meaning just teacher in Japanese, but it's why is it important to make sure we're just always around people. Last week we ended it with the saying, show me 5 of your friends and I'll show you your future. So again, why are we making sure that we're just circulating ourselves as much as possible with high vibrational people? I've been saying through this course, humanity, what we're doing right now is, in a metaphor, if we had potatoes in a bag and the dirty skins are on them potatoes, by ruffling the bags together, all the potatoes ruffling against each other polish that skin. So if you're ruffling against people, the 5 people around you that are really high vibrational, inspirational, they serve the dignity of life and they're creative, then of course that's going to start to trickle down to us. So again, have that in your mind when we speak about Daisaku Ikeda, because again, I'm not trying to make people follow the same route, even though of course this route is there for you. I'm more trying to just inspire people to make sure that we stay as strong as possible, because we are leaders of this pioneering age right now. Things are dramatically changing, as we can see in the world, and yeah, we'll take it from there. So anyway, part 2, Akida's philosophy. Let's go. But what is so special about Akida's philosophy to justify following it above other positions? Before examining the key elements, it is important to point out that Akida's contribution to SGI philosophy, it's part of a continuum from Makaguchi and Toda, both also providing new insights and perspectives on Nichiren Buddhism that Akida has built on. To a dogmatist, it's easy to attack this philosophical development as straying from the original and correct path. However, as we have seen in the preceding chapters on the Lotus Sutra, Nichiren and the Gohonzon, there are no absolutes to the framework of practice, since so much has evolved and changed. Even the philosophy that the followers and priesthood of Nichiren Shoshu adhere to has undergone an evolutionary process. First with Nichiren's disciple Nikko, then in the 18th century with the reformist high priest Nichikan, who among other changes raised the status and centrality of the Daigohonzon. So I remember we were talking about, so there was a priest in the 18th century, and there was a time when the Gohonzon was being put up on frames on walls and stuff, and the priests were actually becoming too powerful. And in the 18th century, a priest called Nichikan, he's considered like the restorer of true Buddhism, came about. And remember we spoke about the Daigohonzon, which is like kind of like considered the main Gohonzon that Nichiren inscribed. But we spoke about this in the Gohonzon chapter, that there's a lot of proof to say that he may not have even done that himself. And as we understand in the SGI, every single Gohonzon is a reflection of the mystic law and the treasure tower, and so therefore there isn't one specific one. However, at that time it was important, I guess, to kind of like raise the status of this one main Gohonzon, to remind people it is the law that we follow, not the people. So just to remind people about some of the stuff, I'll be doing this throughout today. And finally, even with the influence of the Soka Gakkai, who developed the form of the of Gongyo under Toda, that lay Shoshu practitioners still follow. The dignity of life. Akida's great contribution has been interpreting Nichiren Buddhism for modern times. Such an approach is synopsis with Nichiren himself, who wrote, "When it comes to studying the teachings of Buddhism, one must first understand the time. To make a teaching relevant and accessible, in order for it to continue to help those who are suffering, it must be revisited through the language, understanding and values of contemporary society without compromising the heart of its message." This is what Akida has done so successfully, and is the root of SGI success from the 1970s onwards. Rooted in his mentor's awakening that the Buddha is life itself, Akida has placed respect for the dignity of life as the central tenet of SGI's philosophy. Life is a universal value, open and flexible enough to find common ground with people across the world, but also clear enough to anchor, to root and affirm the philosophy. Do one's actions protect and nurture life in front of all around you, or do they not? A simple, practical reflection that every individual can apply to their circumstances. Inner transformation. Secondly, Akida has taken Toda's concept of human revolution and made it the central purpose of Nichiren Buddhist practice. As it's oft quoted from his novel, The Human Revolution, Akida's vision of this process is summed up when he wrote, and this quote here, guys, is, I've said this for the last 13 weeks, one of my favorite quotes truly ever, because it just when you listen to this quote, remember that this is you, this is me. "A great revolution in just a single individual will help achieve a change in the destiny of a nation, and further will enable a change in the destiny of all humankind." one more time, because we are that treasure tower. A great revolution in just a single individual will help achieve a change in the destiny of a nation, and further will enable a change in the destiny of all humankind. The process of human revolution aims, therefore, to reform social and institutional structures, but does so through individual inner transformation. And that is what Kosen Rufu is. It's each one of us remembering the treasure towers. It's not some president coming saving everyone and everyone's like following someone, because that's all the tricks that they're playing on us right now. Keep on making us go external instead of remembering who we are. One more time, a great revolution in just a single individual will help achieve a change in the destiny of a nation, and further will enable a change in the destiny of all humankind. The process of human revolution aims, therefore, to reform social and institutional structures, but does so through individual inner transformation. Personal change through practice in Buddhism then enacts wider change. The changed individual makes different choices to the ones they would have made, therefore interacting with their environment in a way that creates significantly more value. For example, before I started practicing Buddhism, I had never stuck with a job for more than 2 years before becoming so bored or restless that I had to just quit. When I started my first teaching job 2 years after starting to chant, I determined to stick with it for 7 years. In the end, I stayed at this particular job for 8 years. This was a clear example to me of my human revolution. The revolution was in fact internal change, greater patience, resilience, and a fortitude in a far more challenging job than I had ever been before. The external effect manifested as my not giving up in my workplace. The inner change of human revolution also affords the practitioner the opportunity to reframe difficulties and seemingly negative events in line with the Buddhist concept of changing poison into medicine. This corresponds with much recent research on the effects of trauma. Most of us have heard of post-traumatic stress disorder, or PTSD, but few know about post-traumatic growth, a term developed by Richard Tedeschi and Lawrence Calhoun of the University of North Carolina at Charlotte. The researchers found that trauma and adverse life experiences did not necessarily lead to stress and disorder. They could lead to a renewed sense of purpose, stronger relationships, inner strength, a greater appreciation for life, and a deeper spiritual life. So this is why I always talk about people. Turn the poison of your life into medicine. In fact, the more poison you have, the more medicine you can achieve. And when you realize that life is inevitable suffering, if I can't feed myself tomorrow for some reason, then I'm going to suffer. So therefore, the inevitability of suffering is always going to be there. I'm always going to have the inevitable moment I lose my mother to death or a friend to death, etc. So life is inevitable potential suffering. So if you come from the perspective of, I can always, knowing this, I turn poison into medicine. Of course, it will be painful when my mother dies, but instead, when she goes, I turn that poison into medicine. I don't become an aggressive, angry person. I become her successor. I use that pain to become the most amazing version of everything she wanted me to be. That's just an example of turning poison into medicine, for instance. But what factors allow some to experience growth and inner revitalization from negative life experience, while others are seemingly damaged and traumatized? Although neither are mutually exclusive, resilient researchers Stephen Southwick of Yale School of Medicine and Dennis Charney of the Icahn School of Medicine of Mount Sinai found a series of key characteristics which led to a resilient response. These included having a worthy goal or mission in life, receiving social support, and having a transcendent or spiritual source of meaning. In other words, key aspects of our Buddhist practice that we have examined. Kosen Rufu, the support of SGI meetings, and the chanting of the Daimoku are components which could develop resilience in the face of negativity. Scientists have shown that although genetics can contribute, resilience is not a fixed trait, and we can change, reframe, and revitalize our lives regarding to our circumstances, thus, in Buddhist terms, carrying out our human revolution. I just realized we didn't chant, by the way, and I'm going to do that in between section 2 and 3, which is coming up. Buddhist Humanism. Thirdly, Akida has introduced the notion of Buddhist humanism. In contrast to Western humanism, which puts humanity above nature, Buddhist humanism centers on the human being as an interdependent part of the chain of life. Its pillars are peace, culture, and education, which can be adapted to different countries and cultures. Seeger has stated, Buddhist humanism seeks to inspire, empower, and unite people around the globe by basing its appeals on the universal human experience. It is this universalism in Akida's thought based on our shared humanity, irrespective of religious affiliations and ethnic or cultural boundaries, that has led to the emphasis on global citizenship in SGI and its engagement in interfaith dialogue. Olivia Urban, former director of the Toda Peace Institution, defines Akida philosophy for peace encompassed in the term Buddhist humanism as containing 3 key elements: inner transformation, global citizenship, and dialogue. Rabbi Abraham Cooper of the Simon Wiesenthal Center, I said that wrong, so I apologize to that man's name, a Jewish human rights organization, has collaborated with SGI in creating a Japanese version of the Holocaust exhibition at a time when the tabloid Japanese media was still propagating the views of Holocaust deniers. Cooper recalled to Seeger that the first time he met Ikeda, around the time of the Jewish festivals of Hanukkah, it dawned on me after about 3 minutes that Ikeda knew all about Hanukkah. I was explaining it, but hey, he knew all about it. He seemed like a nice guy, very approachable, a very sharp guy, very open. The evolution of Ikeda's philosophy. The SGI movement today is established on this broad, inclusive and global path set by Akida. But it is important to note that, as with Nichiren, Ikeda's philosophy and understanding have been on their own evolutionary journey through a process of reflection and refinement. Akida often refers to how he is the man he is today thanks to the guidance of his mentor. Toda was an inspirational leader with the grandest of visions. However, he was also a man of his time. His profound firebrand oration and absolutist approach empowered the suffering populace of Japan reeling after the war. In doing so, his form of shakubuku, the sharing of Nichiren Buddhist practice, rejected erroneous religions and encouraged the removal of previous sacred objects in the new practitioners' homes. The rapid expansion of the Soka Gakkai in the 1950s may have also resulted in some unintended consequences. So it's talking about here, just after the war, Hiroshima, Nagasaki. This is when the rise of Nichiren Buddhism in Japan really started to happen. And since Daisaku Ikeda, his mentor, Josei Toda, in the 50s, his approach to shakubuku people, which means introducing Buddhism to people, was much stricter than it is now. You know, he would refute other forms of Buddhism, which I want, and anyone who studies Buddhism absolutely understands why that was necessary, because there are many incorrect ways of practicing Buddhism, many erroneous priests and treacherous priests, you know, and so and there was a level of suffering we can't even imagine, so therefore it had to be a lot different. So we're talking about how even now, true Buddhism, as we talked about the Lotus Sutra earlier, and how it's always the true heritage of Buddhism from Shakyamuni when he was alive 3,000 years ago, it is always transforming and changing. This is the beauty, just as we are. As who would have thought that we would be propagating Buddhism on Zoom? You know what I mean? So it's gone from a very strict time to now Daisaku Ikeda spreading across the world. If he came with that same Japanese spirit, it would have been very incorrect. Just to put a note in this quickly, there's a beautiful story where I believe Daisaku Ikeda came to Taplow Court once, and which is our main kind of building in the UK. It's in Taplow, Slough, that kind of area. And when it's open, we'll all go there for a picnic. It's insane. It's the best place ever. So Daisaku Ikeda came to this place once in maybe the 90s or the 80s, and all the English members obviously were so excited, and he went into what's called like the ever chanting room, because it's a room where people are chanting forever, I believe. And he went in there, and all the English people were so excited and giddy, they ran straight behind him and they all took their shoes off, which they would never do normally, but because obviously he's a Japanese man, they all thought, let me follow his culture. So they took all their shoes off and they followed him and sat on the floor, and he turned around and the first thing he said is, go outside and put your shoes on, we're not in Japan. And I don't know if I've told you the story before, but yeah, that there is showing how he had to adapt himself and not be the strict Japanese formal kind of version that he was growing up under Toda's guidance, and spread Buddhism and transform the teachings to make it accessible to someone in Ghana or someone in Southwest London like myself, or someone in Denmark, or you know what I mean? It's like that's the kind of way it had to transform. So let me carry on. The rapid expansion of the Soka Gakkai in the 1950s may have also resulted in some unintended consequences. Kiyoaki Murata in Japan's New Buddhism, an objective account of Soka Gakkai's notes. In the heyday of the Shakubuku drive, so that's like in the heyday of when they were pushing this Buddhism for the first time in Japan, there were clearly many cases of extremism through genuine misunderstanding on the part of the overzealous members of the lower ranks of the Soka Gakkai. But such excesses should not be identified with Toda himself, nor with the Soka Gakkai's policy on shakubuku. For Soka Gakkai leaders did stress the need for moderation and reasonableness. For example, Toda told an audience not to remove a convert's Shinto tablets themselves from their home, but the converts to choose to do this themselves with consent from their family. So from a Western viewpoint, basically, Toda was still lenient to some extent, where he, like, if we was in the West, for instance, he would say that massive cross of Jesus with the blood and he's dying and stuff that you're like praying to every night. Now that you're interested in Buddhism, that's fine, and start to chant and we'll give you a gohonzon, and you don't actually have to take that cross straight away. But there were other lower rank members who would maybe not have had that same guidance from Toda and would have been overzealous, like it said, and too excitable. Like, they become a member and they just started enjoying basically the ego of that. They would go to someone new and then literally rip all of their old religious stuff off their walls and tell them, like, it's only the gohonzon, which is strict and some necessary to some extent, but also kind of wrong. And so explaining how the Soka Gakkai started to also get that view in Japan of, oh my god, maybe they're really strict, like fanatic religious people. So, but such excesses should not be identified with Toda himself, nor with the Soka Gakkai's policy on shakubuku, for Soka Gakkai leaders did stress the need for moderation and reasonableness. For example, Toda told an audience not to remove a convert's Shinto tablet themselves from their home, but the convent should choose to do so themselves with the consent from their family. Akida assumed the presidency in 1960, still reflecting Toda's exclusive approach, and in his May 3rd inaugural address reiterated the aim of challenging erroneous religions. However, in a short space of time, Akida began to travel a new path. James White of Stanford University, an early observer of the Soka Gakkai, observed that since 1962, a tolerance and willingness to open with groups of non-religious matters has developed, and that around the same time the Gakkai daily newspaper, the Shikyo Shimbun, moderated its language. In 1967, members could say, if someone feels he is happy with the Nembutsu or Shingo sect, that's okay. So there were just completely different forms of Buddhism, not to do with Nichiren. By early 1964, Akida was stressing a gentle and reasonable form of conversion based on showing a good example rather than confrontation of beliefs. In the editorial of the Shikyo Shimbun on 4th of January 1967, leaders were encouraged by the following: let us carry out shakubuku without being bound by narrow viewpoints, but always with a broad, flexible attitude. Around the same time, Akida rejected the concept of building a national hall of worship with the support of the state. He reclarified that in Nichiren's times, this would have referred to as an ordination platform for priests contributed by the monarch. In contrast, in the modern democratic era, a temple funded by the people, in this case Gakkai members, would be aspirational. This led to the building of the Hondo, or Grand Main Temple at Taijaki-ji in the early 1970s. By 1969, Akida's conciliatory and open approach was fully established, where he could find the commonalities in Christianity and Buddhism, and states, therefore we can respect each other, not being mutually hostile. We can study each other's doctrines and thus elevate ourselves. However, events in 1970 would accelerate this process further. A crisis becoming a turning point. With continued expansion and success came envy and suspicion. Hirotatsu Fujiwara, a conservative political commentator and professor described by author Henry Scott Stokes as a rebarbative hack, wrote a book, I Denounce Soka Gakkai, in which Higar describes the deliberately incendiary quality of his arguments, in which he skewed recent events and reiterated old charges. Much of the book makes oblique attacks on Akida. Rather than repudiating or ignoring the charges, a group of Gakkai members foolishly approached Fujiwara to correct his inaccuracies, and when this failed, requested he delayed publication. Fujiwara then used the event to attack the Soka Gakkai further for trying to disrupt free speech, resulting in the issue being debated heatedly in the Japanese parliament, the Diet. Turning poison into medicine, Akida used the crisis as an opportunity to develop the Soka Gakkai's universalist and progressive approach even further. Seeger described his May 1970 speech at the 33rd Soka Gakkai General Meeting as a watershed moment for his philosophy and the movement in general. While affirming to take lessons from the incident and not make the same mistake again, which included formally separating the Komeito political party from the Soka Gakkai, he called for further openness, democratization and moderation in approach, including an absolute commitment to free speech and religious freedom. He outlined 3 key principles as the bedrock of his new approach, as Seeger describes. The heart of Nichiren's message to the modern world. absolute pacifism, the sanctity of human life, and respect for human dignity. These principles are universal to humankind, transcending the limits of religions, race, nationality, or ideology. They derive from the essential nature of human existence. Everything starts from this humanism, Ikeda explained. Emboldened by this outward-looking universalist approach, Ikeda set out to actively engage in cultural exchange through dialogue, starting with his meetings with British historian Arnold Toynbee. Toynbee encouraged Ikeda to continue to meet other great thinkers, providing him with a further connection such as Aurelio Pacelli, I believe that name was, first president of the Club of Rome. Through his many dialogues, Ikeda has had the opportunity to further hone his perspective and humanistic outlooks. In 1991, the 1991 split with the priesthood liberated Ikeda further to express these views and to further democratize SGI. In the year prior to this, he had already urged SGI USA on a visit to the States to become a less rigid organization, to reject authoritarian leadership, and to become more democratic, participatory, and open, so there was no discrimination between members and non-members. The SGI Charter formalized in 1995 with the culmination of Ikeda's vision, affirming a spirit of religious tolerance, respect for cultural diversity, and the independence of autonomy of the constituent organizations in each country. Ikeda's life example. I love this quote as well. This is one of Nichiren's quotes. The purpose of the appearance of Shakyamuni Buddha, the Lord of Teachings, lies in his behavior as a human being. The purpose of the appearance of Shakyamuni Buddha, the Lord of Teachings, lies in his behavior as a human being. So again, we as treasure towers of the 21st century, walking out in such a damaged society, everyone's so lost, there's so much fear, we are in a war, in a sense, a spiritual war right now of knowledge and elitism and poverty. The purpose of the appearance of Shakyamuni Buddha, the Lord of Teachings, lies in his behavior or her behavior as a human being. So it is, we share the teachings of Buddhism or our yoga practice, our whatever it is. The best way to share that with our fellow brothers and sisters whose eyes are maybe closed and they're more rigid to our beliefs isn't by forcing them to listen to us. It is simply by being that example, truly radiating that light from our treasure tower always. And that is the most powerful way. It's definitely the most powerful way I've realized in the last 2 years. I've shined more authentically and vulnerably online in my Instagram lives and all of these things. And the more vulnerable I am with my close people, the more honest I am, the more I try to just honor the dignity of my life and not slander my life by not expressing, by not being truly who I am in all moments. That is what this quote means. And that is why I believe I am finding and gravitating towards more incredible kings and queens like yourself and stuff, people that resonate like me, and people will start to go away that don't resonate with you, and you send them away with absolute love, because without them I wouldn't be here now. But that's all of that from these two sentences. The purpose of the appearance of Shakyamuni Buddha, the Lord of Teachings, lies in his behavior or her behavior as a human being. Remember, we are Shakyamuni Buddha, we are Nichiren, we are God, Allah, Jah, Sai Baba, all of that. So it is us. We have to believe that we have that absolute power, and it is in our behavior. You know, it's when you're at a conference doing something and everyone's looking at you thinking, why are you so bubbly, why are you so strong, how are you so resilient, how comes everything's got turned into shit but you just seem rooted like a tree. You don't have to say, oh, it's because I practice Buddhism. Yes, sane, I see you. But anyway, you know what I mean? It's that's the most powerful thing. Just your being a light, being a representative, a disciple of Buddhism in a sense, you know, and that's what it means. It doesn't have to be some deeply religious thing. I'm a disciple of the Buddha. It's like that's what it means to just be that rooted person. Anyway, however noble a philosophy Ikeda may espouse, it is his life example, his behavior as a human being, which must inspire his disciples to enact a human revolution in their own lives. For the members who worked alongside him in the pioneering days, it was his commitment, compassion, and action which instilled in them a confidence that allowed us to change our lives. It was he who taught us the oneness of mentor and disciple, stated Tadashi Murata, a member of Kanzai in those early days. For Gary McCarthy, the SGI USA writer who worked alongside Akida in the 1970s and 1980s, he was never self-serving and always remained embraced and thanking McCarthy. Yes, Zane, I do see you there, bro. Even though he was one of the innumerable people Akida would be dealing with every day. Akida's lack of affection, great compassion and vision for great resonance powerfully in MacArthur's study of him. Akida is a source of inspiration for SGI members the world over, and for those who have never met him through the drama that plays out on the pages of the Human Revolution and the New Human Revolution. Yet the testaments of those outside of SGI provide greater proof to the cynic of Akida's genuine personality and motive. Lawrence Carter found him a profoundly authentic and humble person, spiritual genius that he obviously was. On his dialogue with Akida, he said, "What I sensed most from him was a tremendous sincerity, unpretentious, open and honest, with no ego at all. He seemed to be coming from a place of such profound non-violence, humility and concern for humanity that even after spending a relatively brief time with him, I felt heard, seen, known and whole. I was at peace." Carter saw in Akida someone who wanted and could empower him to revitalize his own Christian practice, and concludes, "Of all the spiritual and philosophical leaders I have met, it is this Japanese lay Buddhist who has been the most impressive in terms of sincerity, learning, action, integrity, achievement and global vision. Daisaku Ikeda has captured my heart, my mind and my spirit in a way that I find difficult to describe, except to say that at least after many years I have found another mentor." And just for my own personal, just to put a pin in there, my own personal example, one time I think I chanted Nam-myoho Renge Kyo online for an hour. Sometimes I just want to do that because I chant that normally, but I feel like it's an opportunity for people maybe just to log in and chant. And after that, a Muslim man sent me, an Islamic person sent me a message in the DMs telling me, brother, like, what you like to see such a young man chant for such a long time. It's revitalized my own faith, and I'm ready to start praying 5 times a day and like really trying to connect back to Allah as much as I can. And that is absolutely my dream. It's, no way do I think he's on the wrong path. No way do I think I'm above him or I've got more of an exclusive way of talking to Allah. You know, like I truly believe everyone's on their own path. But what he saw in me was simply just the light, the energy, I guess, the determination, the discipline. And so just by that, I helped to revitalize someone from a different faith. And that was a beautiful example for me about truly, it doesn't really, our impact as well was so profound, we don't even realize, you know, because a true Muslim will respect and honor a true Buddhist and will be able to be in the same room and to connect to the source in our own ways, regardless. You know, if I was looking at him like, yeah, he might be doing that now, but I can't wait for him to be Buddhist one day, I would still be in the ego, you know. The scholar Richard Hugh Seeger found in his research, as I grew to admire his disciples' consistency in expressing empowerment for self and others in ways both healthy and sane, I also came to trust Akida according to the principle which is both Buddhist and Christian, that by the fruit you shall know the tree. In his chapter, The Ultimate Declaration, Clark Strand, the Pan-Buddhist writer, explains to a new SGI member suspicious of why Akida's name is written large within the organization. It is because, like Toda and Makaguchi, he stood at the forefront for Kosen Rufu and has taken the ultimate risk, taken all his actions with his life force, with his lifeblood. Strand asks her if she will make that stand to add your name to the declaration, and if not, why not? So, part 3, but we're going to chant now for a few minutes. Toya, good to see you. So, yeah, it's on my laptop. This is 36. So, I'll chant till 40, which is 4 minutes. Let's go. Nam-myoho Renge Kyo, Nam-myoho Renge Kyo, Nam-myoho Renge Kyo. Nam-myoho Renge Kyo, Nam-myoho Renge Kyo, Nam-myoho Renge Kyo, Nam-myoho Renge Kyo, Nam-myoho Renge Kyo. Renge Kyo, Nam-myoho 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 Renge Kyo. Renge Kyo, Nam-myoho 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 Renge Kyo. Renge kyo nam yo ho, 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 renge kyo. Renge kyo nam yo ho, 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 renge kyo. Renge kyo nam yo ho, 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 renge kyo. Renge kyo nam yo ho, 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 renge kyo. Renge kyo nam yo ho, 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 renge kyo. Renge kyo nam yo ho, 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 renge kyo. Renge kyo nam yo ho, 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 renge kyo. Renge kyo nam yo ho, renge kyo nam yo ho, renge kyo. Nam yo ho, renge kyo nam yo ho, renge kyo nam yo ho, renge kyo. Thank you, guys. Switching it up, second to last one, chanting in the middle, why not? So, $11 people, well 10 including me. What an honor, truly. What an honor. So we're gonna go carry on straight in to part 3 on persecutions, and we all know about persecutions, man. Hopefully this will make us realize why when we're persecuting this, we're on the right path actually. Trust me, because the dark don't like it when it senses the light coming back in. So just know that about yourself as well. The more we step into ourself, the more we activate the spirituality within ourselves, and all the 7 chakras start aligning, ding, 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 ding. And the more we start being more compassionate and loving of other people, you will trigger people. The darkness, the low life states in other people will be activated. Even more reason why we have to be strong and resilient, because when you know that, again, you can turn even more poison into medicine. You know, it's happened to me consistently, but it's an honor, again, and when you realize, because of course we're activating ourselves so strong spiritually, walking around where there's so much depression and anger. You know, me and Chris took my mother out to a restaurant for her birthday yesterday, and in the restaurant these 2 people just literally just the greyest of low energy just kept pouring it on all of us. And you know, we were discussing it, me, mum and Chris, about how it's you know, we wasn't being loud or nothing, but we were radiating happiness. You have to understand, like, you know, I had money to be able to take my mother out, something I never even have normally. We had the best food, like I'm talking about, it was just incredible. And so we're radiating from our heart chakra happiness. And then the waiter, who's someone I've known for over a decade, it's an Italian restaurant in South London I'm going to for years. The waiter, you know, he had a mask on and he was very frustrated. I could tell he couldn't breathe properly, and I was asking for a pasta called the Al Pacino pasta that's not even on the menu, because they know me so well. They normally just make what I want because I'm a decade long customer. And he was getting angry and frustrated because he couldn't understand what I was saying, and he knows me, but his life force was really low, and I think just by seeing us so happy, he's no doubt worrying about the upcoming potential lockdown. Like, he's no doubt, I'm there enjoying life, spending money, he's there taking our money, and it's no doubt only just about scraping their electric bill right now. Independent companies are really suffering. So it's just a note, that when you know your wisdom, you can understand why this happens, especially with your family. Expect that the more you start to, especially if you start walking around and saying, I'm a religious person now, or anything like that, or I'm spiritual, or something like that. You can really expect, you can expect your husband to go, this is not the woman I married, or who the hell is this? Why you're out here walking barefoot in the park talking about the mystic law? Expect it, it happens, and that's why it's important. And it will explain a bit from the Buddhist concept why this happens, but it's important to stay stand firm, and to remember who you are, because otherwise we're going to be swayed by everyone else's low life state consistently. So yeah, let me carry on, because we don't actually have much left, and I don't want to take too much of your time. So part 3 on persecutions. Despite the respect, praise, and friendship of many leading figures from Gorbachevich, I'm sorry that name I can't say, to Mandala, the latter having sought out a meeting with Ikeda rather than the other way round, and to date 396 honorary degrees from 380 different universities spanning all regions of the world, Akida has been attacked and pillared in the media and online. Why is this? Gui He Hen, a senior academic from Singapore, explained the controversy to Siga. When you become a great man, there will always be people who do not like you. Why has Akida been... So I don't need my glasses. Why has Akida been attacked? But I consider there to be more than Akida's greatness as a cause for the attacks on him. By slandering Akida, those who wish to do the SGI harm have a human target to undermine the whole Buddhist movement. The human propensity to gossip is hardwired from humanity's ancient ancestry, and so a human target is far more tangible than an organization to cause consternation and concern. Furthermore, by attacking Akida, his detractors aim to sow doubt in the members' hearts and drive a wedge between mentor and disciple. So, behind the accusations against Akida is a desire to undermine the SGI movement. But what are the reasons that the Soka Gakkai and the SGI would attract persecution and calumny? The first reason is the unprecedented and enormous expansion of the Soka Gakkai in the 1950s and in the 1960s in Japan, with literally thousands of people converting to a new faith in local areas, sometimes in a matter of weeks or months. Long-established temples and their vested interests were losing their partitioners at an alarming rate. Fighting back at this new movement was a response to defend their tradition and, sometimes in the case of priests, their livelihood. At the same time, especially in the 1950s, as noted by Murata earlier in the chapter, the growth was so rapid that new members at the grassroots could be sharing the practice in a forthright manner after a few days of chanting, not sanctioned by the leadership of the movement. This could cause misunderstanding and upset. Akida's presidency in the 1960s, as we have seen, reinforced a policy of moderation to ensure such incidences did not reoccur, and it has been noted that reports in newspapers regarding overzealous propagation was largely confined to a short period between 1952 and 1956. The second reason for criticism of the Soka Gakkai was its decision to be involved in politics by founding a political party, the Komi-Aito, or Clean Government Party. This is not so unusual. For example, the Christian Democratic Union Party in Germany was founded in 1945 and has been the dominant political party in the country, leading many governments since World War II. Komi-Aito was established as a reformist movement to challenge the corruption of Japanese politics, still led by families associated with the wartime militarist regime. SGI has consistently reiterated that it has no intention to found political parties in any other country and has never done so. As referred to earlier, in 1970, along with other reforms, Komi-Aito formally separated from the Soka Gakkai and has continued to function as a separate entity whilst continuing to enjoy voter support from Soka Gakkai members. In fact, the Komi-Aito has been in the ruling coalition in Japan for the past 20 years, but prior to that, in the 1990s, it was part of a number of opposition parties who posed a substantial threat to the dominant Liberal Democratic Party. It is no coincidence that the most ferocious attacks on Akida came in the mid-1990s from established media and with the tacit support of the LPD, an example of which will follow. Thirdly, the split with the Nichiren Shoshu priesthood remember we split in 1991 when they wanted to pray to the Daigahons, and they believed they had the true lineage all the way back to Nichiren, which we've already spoke about. It was impossible. It's impossible. So that's the difference. SGI, Nichiren Shoshu. So thirdly, the split with the Nichiren Shoshu priesthood in 1991 created a whole new contingent who became bitterly opposed to SGI's liberal reformist agenda led by Akida. The priests, in losing the support of the vast majority of lay members, had cause to feel vengeful. That pine needle. Thirdly, it is also important to note that scholars have absolved Ikeda from any of the accusations made against him. For example, Sato Watanabe, a professor of media ethics at Doshisha University, Kyoto, and Adam Gamble, an investigator reporter, have concluded. Indeed, despite his many detractors in Japan, it is well nigh impossible to come up with any hard facts that justify an indictment on Ikeda's character. A perspective from the Lotus Sutra. Persecutions of Ikeda and SGI also resonate on a scriptural level for practitioners, with the three powerful enemies as outlined in the 13th chapter of the Lotus Sutra. These are the three groups of people who persecute the votary of the Lotus Sutra in the dark age after Shakyamuni passing, which is us now. They are lay people ignorant of Buddhism who denounce the votaries of the Lotus Sutra. So that would just be like when my best friend, who I've got tattooed on my wrist, started to see me chanting all the time. He called my Gohonzon jibber jabber, and he said, it's all just bullshit. So that is an example of the first obstacle in faith. The people, lay people, so like not people that are priests or anything, just ordinary people ignorant of Buddhism who denounce the votaries of the Lotus Sutra. Second, arrogant and cunning priests who think they have attained what they have not attained and slander the votaries. That's quite self-explanatory. And then third, priests revered as saints and respected by the general public who, in fear of losing fame or profit, induce the secular authorities to persecute the votaries of the Lotus Sutra. It is likely that the Mahayana creators of the Lotus Sutra suffered persecutions in stepping beyond the monastic confines of traditional Buddhism at that time, and these categories reflected their real experiences. For modern SGI members, just as they did for Nichiren, they provide a scriptural reframing of their feelings under external forces. Rather than fall into victim mode, SGI members can consider the abuse and injustice hurled upon Nichiren and the three founding presidents and feel emboldened that this negativity is part of the process, in fact a vital part towards revealing our Buddhahood. I have found the concept empowering in my own life when I have experienced criticism of my teaching, challenging conversations with school parents or conflicts with fellow members of staff. I remember one day after work, in which I had felt berated on all sides, from an inspector who had observed my teachings that day, from a parent who came to see me regarding their child, and from a senior member of staff. I chanted to embrace these challenges while still asserting my best self. Lying in bed that night, inside of feeling washed out and exhausted, the most incredible tingling sensation went through my body, and I felt refreshed and revived. I felt my chanting was manifesting Nichiren's spirit when he wrote, "When I think I will surely eradicate these karmic impediments and in the future go to the pure land of Eagle Peak through various grave persecutions fall on me like rain and boil up like clouds, since they are for the sake of the Lotus Sutra, even these sufferings do not seem like sufferings at all." And it's took me years to understand that, and it will take many people years to understand that level of awareness, but I do feel that as well. When persecutions fall on me, especially when I know I've been really strong on my faith, I really know it's actually my greatest opportunity to change my karma, because otherwise, like, maybe my angry tendency or my lazy tendency or my aggressive tendency or whatever it is would have remained dormant and stagnant in my karma, but these difficult times I'm now going through are showing me this, and I can now transform it. So and I don't know, you guys resonate with that as well. It's not that deep, but it's also that deep, you know. And when it says here, since it's all for the sake of the Lotus Sutra, let's just say for us, since it's all for the sake of ordinary people right now and remembering who we are and empowering ourselves, since everything we're doing right now is for the sake of that, you know, by all of us sitting here and listening to this and trying to study this, that is what it means for the sake of the Lotus Sutra. It's not like you specifically have to have a copy of the Lotus Sutra, be a member, an SGI member, and like you're doing it for this book. That's not what it means. That's a shallow understanding. We're trying to develop ourselves as much as we can, and if we're trying to develop ourselves as much as we can and it is causing people to be triggered around us, or people to try and hold us back, or we're receiving obstacles and walls, if you know it's because you're trying to develop yourself, which is all for the sake of the Lotus Sutra, then even the sufferings do not seem like sufferings at all. So I hope you can understand what that really, really means. Good. I saw a nod there, Maria. Yes, this is deep. Okay. In the same spirit, Daisaku Ikeda has calmly faced horrendous persecutions from the Osaka incident when he was falsely accused of election fraud and vindicated in court, to base slander from Japan's tabloid press. My persecution seemed trifling in comparison. It is these media attacks on which I will now focus on. Early media invective. The story of the media response to the Soka Gakkai and Akida begins in the 1950s, when the press disparagingly labelled the movement a gathering of the sick and poor. Toda in repose took this as an insult. Toda in repose took this not as an insult, but as a badge of honor. For what is Buddhism worth if it is not aimed at relieving the suffering of ordinary people? I love that, because the idea that in Japan, most Buddhism, there would have been everyone was walking around like saints, and like they would have had like golden statues of Shakyamuni and in grand temples. And then the SGI came, Jose Toda, some skinny man, like 50 years old, come out of prison, and all of these sick, desperate, and broke people were drawn to the Soka Gakkai, ordinary people, and it was and most people were looking down at it, thinking it was a gathering just of sick and poor people. But again, when you realize actually it's the first time individual people are being empowered, of course it's going to be filled of sick and ill people, because that's the state of the latter day of the law. So for what is Buddhism worth if it is not aimed at revealing the suffering of ordinary people? Incidents of forceful shakubuku, introducing Buddhism to people. Incidents of forceful shakubuku by overzealous new converts were recounted in the Japanese press, but James White wrote that one notable feature of these data is that nearly all the incidents occurred before 1957. That's the year before Toda died. In other words, during the initial time of massive growth and momentum. Richard Hughes Seeger asked in Suku Ekaya about those times and the criticism that Toda had to rein in the passionate drive, particularly of the young men of those times. Ekaya explained, young people were often criticized for their heated discussion during shakubuku. He recalls, but you have to understand that to introduce someone to a new practice, if that person already had a belief system, you have to have a dialogue with them to change their view. It's like revolutionizing a person's worldview. We were not savvy communicators. All we felt was passion and conviction. I really want to talk about this. I want you to understand. I want you to start this practice. You can imagine the reaction. This heady expansion gave ammunition to the movement's detractors in the press, but it also resulted in the empowerment and well-being of millions of families, and was the initial cause of SGI's later success across the world. As we considered earlier, Akida's guidance has been of moderation, tolerance and respect, and indeed, contrary to the perception created by the Japanese media in the 1950s, this was also the case with the vast majority of members even from the early days. James White found in an analysis of 5 surveys of the 1960s that only 4% of Japanese members named strangers as those who converted them, and a study published in 1962 indicated that Gakkai members overwhelmingly recognized the social necessity of cooperation with individuals and groups of other religious persuasions. It noted a surprising degree of tolerance and liberalism. An experience of sharing Buddhism. Shakubuki. That was a mixture of Shakyamuni and Shakubuku. Shakubuku, the sharing of Nichiren Buddhist practice, is a challenge in any area. One's own reservations, self-consciousness, and negativity must be challenged to share something deeply personal that can change a person's life positively on a fundamental level. Some of my most joyous moments have been when I have mustered up the courage to share the practice, and that's the same for me, and it will be the same for all of you. Not just sharing Buddhism, but just sharing something that makes you happy. If you say you're at an event, or you're wherever you are, and you meet someone and you can tell that they're suffering, and you're like, it takes a lot of courage to go, oh, can I share this practice? Nam Myoho Renge Kyo. They're like, there's a lot of courage, and that means that's only that you have to have a lot of self-development. And Nichiren says shakubukuing in the latter day of the law is one of the most difficult things you can ever do, truly, because you're trying to, like it says above, you're trying to like revolutionize someone's entire worldview. If you're trying to take them from like an Western Abrahamic way of seeing life and putting all their power externally to suddenly telling them, brother, you are God, you know that, you are the center of the universe, you are everything, you are the treasure tower. And then to do that when you're having a red wine at the bar at a club, it's quite intense, but it's always the most amazing thing when you share it. And it says this as well in the Gosho, whether specifically about Buddhism, if you share the practice with someone, whether they laugh in your face and walk off or whether they become a member for the rest of their life, we receive the same benefit for having that courage for sharing the law in the latter day. So share away, basically. Some of my most joyous moments have been when I mustered up the courage to share the practice. One occasion took place a few years back when I was returning from a residential school trip, camping in the woods for a couple days to learn about the Stone Age with a group of third grade pupils. Exhausted from lack of sleep, things took a turn for the worse when our coach broke down just outside Birmingham, one of the busiest parts of the motorway in the UK, known as the Spaghetti Junction. The motorway was closed for us at the peak of the Friday rush hour, and we made the local press that evening due to the ensuing chaos. After transferring to 2 different replacement buses, I plonked my rattled self down next to the coach driver. Tomasz came from Poland and had studied philosophy at Warsaw University. A lively conversation ensued, including a discussion on Buddhism. We exchanged numbers, and a few weeks later I drove 2 hours out of London to take him to his local discussion meeting. Eventually, Tomasz decided to take up chanting along with his fiancée and found immediate benefit. When Brexit arrived in the UK, Tomasz and his partner decided to move back to Poland, but they continued to chant. Last year, I received a text from him. Tomasz has been made the deputy mayor of his town and signed off with, "This chanting really works. Nothing gives me greater joy than to empower somebody in this way." Japanese media atrocities. For critics of SGI and Akida, spurious claims on the internet or in Japan's tabloid press are perfect ammunition. But is there no smoke without fire? You don't have to take my word for it or anyone else aligned with SGI. Independent academics have consistently demolished the inflammatory claims made against Akida. One book stands out in this regard, written by the aforementioned noted media academic Wannabe and Gamble, entitled "A Public Betrayal, an Inside Look at Japanese Media Atrocities and Their Warnings to the West." It tackles the often salacious, unverified and uncountable tabloid press in Japan, who have, the authors described, committed media atrocities, including denying the Holocaust and Japan's role in war crimes such as the Nanji Massacre. They devote a whole chapter to the smearing of a Buddhist leader, Daisaku Ikeda. In Japan, it is this weekly news magazine, Shu Kanji, rather than a daily newspaper, that are quick to report sensationalist material. In an industry where powerful news and publishing corporations dominate and libel suits are extremely rare, intense commercial competition has motivated some of the weekly Shu Kanji to stretch well beyond the bounds of truth, which is no different to the BBC nowadays. Alongside this, the weekly advertise their most sensational and eye-popping stories in simple, pithy headlines in advertisements on most train services. A group of scholars conservatively estimated that beyond the readership of the magazine, 10 to 20 million people are exposed to the headlines per week on public transport. There is a saying in Japan: the nail that sticks out is hammered down. In a highly conformist culture, difference is not celebrated but attacked. The Japanese even have a word for it: ijimi, which means different from us and represents the group psychology which results in bullying in the classroom and rejection in the workplace. Jun Kamai, a long-term writer and editor for Shuhan Shinjo, the notorious weekly magazine that victimized Akida in the 1990s, acknowledges the magazine would regularly instigate media ijimi. SGI and Akida, being non-conformist, pacifists and different to mainstream Japan, were prime targets. Combine this with lax and unchecked reporting, in which there is even a journalist termed coin netsuko, meaning the manufacturing of the news, and you have a recipe of laborious content and bold-faced lies. The smearing of a Buddhist leader. The case against Akida centered on the reporting of one weekly, the aforementioned Shuhan Shinjo, who over a sustained period of years in the 1990s took particular delight in publishing spurious material about Akida and SGI. When SGI and Akida took the matter to court, they were vindicated in a strongly worded verdict which emphasized the false nature of the charges against Akida. Watanabe and Gamble note that this is underscored by the fact that less than 20 such verdicts were upheld in such cases between 1959 and 2001 in Japan. The case, in brief, focused on the accusations of 2 former Soka Gakkai members, Mr. and Mrs. Nobuera. In 1992, the Soka Gakkai received complaints that the couple had duped and coerced local members to lend them large amounts of money which was not repaid. The Nobuharas were removed from their leadership positions after refusing to step down and were taken to court with 8 different lawsuits which ordered them to repay to the lenders what amounted to equivalent to $687,400. They formally left the Soka Gakkai in December 1993. It's the year I was born. The couple also tried to sue Ikeda regarding a cemetery plot they had purchased, the court dismissing it as baseless as Ikeda had no involvement. As Gamble and Watanabe points out, this pattern of dubious and immoral behaviour should have raised a string of bright red flags for any journalist considering writing about the couple's charges against Ikeda. Instead, in February 1996, the Shujan Shinjo leapt on a false memoir which detailed allegations made against Ikeda by Nobuku Nobuhara, heavily propagating slanderous and bogus headlines. The Nobuharas, for their part, filed only a civil suit, not criminal charges against Ikeda, even though they claimed to be victims of grave criminal behaviour. Rather than seeking to have Ikeda jailed, they sought financial compensation and publicity through the press. Gamble and Watanabe points out, given the complete absence of supporting evidence, as well as the numerous inconsistencies of the claims, there is no doubt that criminal prosecutors would have dismissed the Nobuhara's claims outright. For example, the later court hearing found many inconsistencies in her statements and concluded that the reason given for her confused memory are also very irrational without any convincing points and lack credibility. Mrs. Nobuhara claimed an assault took place in 1983 in a building which did not even exist at that time. The final court case in its summation described the legal action that severely lacked relevance with respect to the intentions and purposes of the civil litigation system and is contrary to conduct in good faith and trust. Consequently, the complaint can be considered unlawful because it abuses the right of legal action. I think I've got about 2-3 more pages left, guys, then we're going to be done. In the meantime, Shujan Shinjo had everything to gain from publishing the false accusations with impunity. With Ikeda, such a prominent figure in Japan, they could expect increased sales from supporters and detractors of the Soka Gakkai. After the incident, Ichi Yamamoto, a lecturer at Gakushuni University, uncovered 17 audio recordings from early 1996 of conversations between the Nobuharas and Shujan Shinjo journalists, in which the journalists encouraged the Nobuharas to make the accusations more serious, to deliver the maximum punch. Even more unnerving is the fact that the recordings included the voice of some lay leaders of Nichiren Shoshu, an anonymous member of Nichiren Shoshu having sent the recordings to Yamamoto, outraged at the group's scheming against Ikeda. The Soka Gakkai successfully took Shujan Shinjo to court twice, winning both times. If the case had taken place in the UK or USA, compensations for damage would have been vast, but in Japan it was minimal, and the profits made from printing the falsehoods far outweighed any cost paid. Even Lawrence Carter was not free from attack by Shujan Shinjo, who pilloried him for association with Ikeda. In response, Carter wrote a letter to the magazine in protest where he stated, "Controversy is an inevitable partner of greatness. No one who challenges the established order is free of it. Gandhi had his detractors, as did Dr. King. Dr. Ikeda is no exception. Controversy camouflages the intense resilience of entrenched authority to conceding their special status and privilege. Insults are the weapons of the morally weak. Slander is the tool of the spiritual bereft. Controversy is testament to the noble work of these 3 individuals in their respective societies." In his own book, Carter writes, "I have seen ample evidence of the good work of the SGI, the good hearts of its members, and the caring leadership of its president. My continued commitment to the SGI for nearly 2 decades has only strengthened my determination to work with them towards global peace." In 1998, the court proceedings were making it clear that the Nobuhara's charges were patently false. That year, the then Prime Minister of Japan, Ryotaro Hashimoto, formally apologized for the Liberal Democratic Party's exploitation of the false allegation in their pamphlets and articles relating to the claims. The perpetuation of false accusations. But sadly, like Nichiren's metaphor of a single crab claw dropped into a pot of liqueur, ruining its contents, the false coverage continues to emerge in the internet and even in credible journalism taking secondary sources as factual. For example, in November 2003, the Financial Times featured the claims with no content or explanation well after the Supreme Court had ruled all accusations untrue and illegal. On the internet, unregulated and untrammeled, they can regularly still appear, promoted by those who have an interest in undermining SGI. For members who choose to stop practicing, and this is absolutely the right to do so, there can be a desire to justify the rejection to themselves by building a negative by building as negative a case as they can find on the internet against Akida and SGI. What is empowering for SGI members is that concerted, independent academic research has dissolved those accusations and claims, revealing them as falsehood. So what will the future hold? At the time of writing this chapter, Ikeda is 93 years old. His photographed visits to a newly built facility in Shinomachi, Tokyo, scotch rumours of his passing and affirm that he is still with us, but for how much longer is obviously unknown. It may be that you are reading this chapter after the death of Daisaku Ikeda. What the transition after the mentor's passing is like is also a matter of conjecture at this stage. What seems clear though is that there may be more presidents of the Soka Gakkai and SGI, but at least in the next few decades there will not be a fourth president in the same spiritual terms. The three presidents have established the bedrock of SGI philosophy and practice. The New Human Revolution provides a sutra for all age, for our age, and the years since the mid-2000s when Akida ceased making public appearances have already given opportunity for the disciple to take the lead. It is likely the mentor-disciple relationship will be nurtured by millions of SGI members even after Akida's death. Ikeda himself is a model of this process, only having been with his mentor Toda in his lifetime for 10 years, but constantly in dialogue with him in his heart ever since. I have never met Daisaku Ikeda in person. In fact, I missed my one slim chance. I was in Japan when he was speaking at a headquarters leaders meeting at the Makuguchi Memorial Hall in Soka University. I tried to get a ticket for the meeting, but was told a large contingent of Soka University of America students had been given the last seats. This should not have stopped me. I had heard of British brothers who had gatecrashed a similar meeting the year before we met Sensei. Perhaps my ichinin means your presence of heart, your like how strong is your spirit. So that's what it means by ichinin. Perhaps my ichinin, my inner motivation, was not fully there to meet him. But regardless, I don't regret missing the opportunity. I am, like the vast majority of ordinary SGI members, a disciple who has never met his mentor. Those who have met him will become a vanishingly small minority as the years pass. Instead, my relationship with Daisaku Ikeda has deepened over the years, as I have believed in him more and put my trust in him. Following his words and behaviour have made me a better person. Following his heart has fulfilled my life and enriched the world and the people around me. As a result, along with so many others, I can call him my sensei and share my vow for peace. So, 13th study. Show me 5 of your friends, I'll show you your future. You know, some people can't be in. You could be in a hospital, for instance, and you can't have anyone around you. So you could use this as, all right, let me read like really inspiring people. You know, like let me have like a Daisaku Ikeda book, a Dr. Joe Dispenza book if you're into the science. You know what I mean? Like make sure you're just always trying to filter higher vibrational stuff. I'm very lucky, you know, I don't have to have like a very strict routine. I don't have to have an alarm when I wake up in my life. It's something I kind of decided that I need to have in my life like about 5 years ago, and it's how I've lived every day since. And one of the things that I've been doing a lot recently, and the more I do it, the more I see the proof is in the morning I wake up, and before I do anything, you know, I get myself some pine needle tea or some whatever, and I'll put like an incense, and I'll play classical music, and then I'll just read, I'll study. You know, I'll take like this morning I read everything I just read, that, you know, and highlighted what I had to highlight. And when you're doing it in that state, because you're coming out of the delta brainwaves and you're coming back to beta brainwaves, we're in a very suggestible kind of time. Now, I know this is very difficult if you're waking up right now in the UK, for instance, it's 6 o'clock, it's pitch black, you've got to be on a tube for 7. But there also is no excuse. You could be doing an audiobook. Even if you're on the train or you're just when you park up and then just before you get out the car, just read one paragraph, 5 minutes, even if it's 3 minutes. The more we start to just like filter in these really high vibrational concepts and philosophies, the more it trickles out in our day. So for instance, today, all I've been thinking about is like, is what it means to like, to be an example, how Sensei's been, you know, I call him Sensei and he's my mentor, but I have no interest in being like him. You know, I don't want to wear a suit and suddenly walk around the same like him. I love Malcolm X, but I'm not going to start wearing the suits and like, you know, I'm moving the same way he is. I'm going to take their leadership and everything that they have and all their guidance and make it the best version of me, you know, Aaron Indigo, the best version that I can be. I love you. Let's chant 3 times together. I don't want to take up any more of your time. It's been 11 minutes longer. And like I said, next week, if you're joining me, if you're here, bring a Jello shot, bring something, you know, like let's go, man, like a Jaeger bomb. I'm not gonna have a whole Kez. I'm gonna have a whole bottle of red wine while doing the study. So I'll know that'll be lick off and yeah. So but we have to got to study, man. This is what I love Nichiren Buddhism as well. You see me with my dreads, my tattoos. We're drinking out here, and it's all about being the best version of yourself. You know, it's not about trying to not be human, not trying to transcend that. When I'm with some of my senior leaders, man, we're having the best time tipsy, and they're going, fuck this, fuck that, and it's amazing. I'm like, wow, I'm with my real people. You know, there's no way is it when the person that I love the most in my life, who's like a physical mentor, he can be so like foul mouthed sometimes, but it's just incredible, you know, and it's not because he's a bad person, he's just who he is, and I love it, you know. And a good example, by the way, if you want to understand like that, is a book called The Buddha, Jeff and Me. It's amazing. It's just, I think it's like a fable, a story. I'm not sure if it's actually real, but anyway, it's an amazing story about just a window cleaner. It's about a man, he's going through some bullshit, he's in a pub and he meets a window cleaner, and he doesn't realize, he keeps coming back to him, and he's like, why do I keep wanting to come to this pub and to bump into you, Jeff? I don't know what it is. And then one day Jeff said, it's because I'm a Buddhist, maybe it's that I chant. And he realized it's just like, you know, Jeff was sitting there having a cigarette, drinking a beer, you know, swearing. He was so confused, you know, why this man was a Buddhist. And this is what I think part of my mission is really to be the middle path to these Eastern philosophies, you know, so I can share it. I always say, some of my closest friends have Rambo knives and come out of prison and they've got packs of cocaine on them and stuff. I'm not in that world, but these are the world I'm from. This is where I'm from, the streets of South London. How do I make someone like that understand a philosophy like this? Well, it's me being the most ordinary version of myself. You know, obviously we're refining and purifying ourselves. For me, my journey is I'm trying to cut down eating as much meat as I can. Slowly, I'm trying. You know, that's for me. It doesn't mean though you can't be the best Buddhist and be a meat eater. It's just what your heart is telling you to be the best version. You know, now I'm very different around children. I used to swear around kids all the time. I didn't care. Now I realize the dignity of their life. I try and be a better version. So anyway, you get it. I love you. 3 chants and then I'm going to love you and leave you. Nam yo ho renge kyo. Nam yo ho renge kyo. Nam yo ho renge kyo. Thank you, my family. We did it. Couple more pages left, the conclusion, and we've studied a whole book. I'm so proud of all of you. I love you. Stay happy, and I've been saying it every single week, but hopefully next time for the last one I might have my neck tatted, and if not, I guess it was what was motivating me for the whole time. I love you. Ciao.